For the third time since President Trump's second term began, the U.S. government is partially shut down. We're now in day 3 of this latest shutdown after Congress failed to reach a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats are demanding reforms to immigration and customs enforcement after 2 American citizens were shot and killed by federal agents in Minneapolis. Right now, there appears to be no hope for a quick resolution, as Democrats say they are not backing down.
We need masks off, we need cameras on, and we need every ICE officer to be identified. Jake, these are common sense proposals. They're supported by the American people. Why won't Republicans go for them?
Well, we're willing to have a good faith conversation about everything, but fundamentally, we need change that is dramatic.
Well, Republicans don't appear to be feeling much pressure to compromise either.
As far as unmasking ICE agents, I could also know probably not, because many of those are involved in undercover operations and you don't want to put them in danger. But there are a lot of things that we could probably sit down and negotiate on. But the problem is that, look, ICE is funded through 2028. And so there's really nothing here, no pressure to do something about ICE, because ICE is funded.
They're not stopping ICE from doing their job. They're not stopping the Border Patrol from doing their job. All this is a political theater because of the State of the Union that's coming up a week from Tuesday.
And as you just heard, ICE will continue to be funded thanks to President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. Still, though, a slew of other agencies under DHS could, like FEMA, the Coast Guard, and the TSA, they could bear the brunt of yet another shutdown. Just listen to what one TSA officer told us.
Instead of us focusing 100% on national security, we're having to focus on where our next paycheck is going to come from, how are we going to feed our families, and so that's it's very stressful.
And joining me now here on set is NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Mel Zanona. Mel, it's so good to have you here. Look, lawmakers seem pretty dug in here. Republicans are arguing that Democrats have no leverage. What is the Democrat strategy right now?
Well, they do have some leverage because they are in the minority, but they do need votes from Democrats in the Senate. So they really view an opportunity here to extract some real concessions when it comes to ICE reforms in exchange for funding the Department of Homeland Security. And they feel buoyed by the fact not only is there recent immigration polling showing the numbers are on their side, but also the president himself said we need to have a lighter touch when it comes to immigration. But Gabe, you probably know this too in talking to the White House. They feel like there has been enough time and space since those shootings that things have calmed down in Minnesota, and that there is a little less public pressure on them to potentially cave on some of these issues. So it's really going to come down to whether they can reach a compromise. But as of right now, very little sense of urgency with Congress not even here.
Yeah,
right
the
now.
Urgency. Well, we just heard Carlos Jimenez there saying that, look, masks seem to be a red line here, but what about body cameras? I know some federal agents are already wearing them, but are there any signs that there could be some compromise on other issues, perhaps other than masks?
Body camera seems to be the #1 area of compromise. And interestingly, though, Republicans have been much more vocal about where they aren't willing to compromise. So you can kind of figure out what a deal would look like by the process of elimination. And some of those sticking points, #1, masks. That's the huge red line for Republicans. They don't want ICE agents to be showing their faces because they're worried about them being doxxed, despite the fact that normal law enforcement doesn't wear masks every day. And the second sticking point is judicial warrants for ICE arrests. That is something that Senate GOP leader John Thune said is a really big problem for some of his members. So it's really, again, going to come down to how much is each side willing to cave.
Right, and Republicans arguing it's political theater ahead of the State of the Union next week. How big is that in the Democrats' thinking here? Do they want to get maximum attention here by bringing up this issue, especially with Congress in recess this week, ahead of the State of the Union? Does this all dissipate once the State of the Union happens?
I'm sure that President Trump is going to be bringing this up at the State of the Union if there is still a shutdown during his address, which at this point it looks like there will be. But Democrats, like I said, they feel like they have momentum on their side, so they don't have a problem calling attention to what they say are these major, major issues with ICE and reminding the public back at home why they're fighting for some of these reforms in the first place.
Mel Zanona, Capitol Hill correspondent, here with me on set. Mel, thank you. And joining me now is Nebraska Republican Congressman Don Bacon. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here on Meet the Press Now. I want to pick up right now where we left off with Mel. How do you see this DHS shutdown ending?
I do think we could find one or two areas that we can agree on. I think body cameras is probably the easiest one. And I think we should try to find the low-hanging fruit that we can agree on, because the shutdown, it doesn't hurt ICE right now. I find this ironic. The Democrats are mad at ICE, Border Patrol. They're both largely funded already. So who's going to pay the price here is FEMA, TSA that protects us at the airports, Secret Service, the Coast Guard, CISA that protects us against cyber attacks from China and Russia. These agencies need to be funded. But instead of playing hardball, I think we should look, what are one or two areas that we can agree on? And I think body cameras is clearly one. Most law enforcement agencies all over the country already have those. So that seems like an easy one. And if there's something else that maybe we could agree to, I would call that governing.
Well, look, the administration has already softened on body cameras a bit. A short time ago, they said that federal agents in Minneapolis, at least some of them, would wear body cameras. But what about one of the other issues that Mel brought up, this issue of judicial warrants before ICE agents make arrests inside homes? How do you come down on that? And do you think that, Republicans would budge at all on that?
I think if you're going to search a home, you have to have a warrant. I think that's in the Constitution. However, if someone, police have made arrests at people's doors that are citizens if they're guilty of a crime, and so I think the one size fits all here. If you need it for citizens, I think you got to have a warrant to search somebody's house. But I've seen people arrested in front of their homes, without a warrant. Right. So I'm not a lawyer, but we'll let the legal guys take care of this. But I think body cameras are an easy one.
And quickly, because I do want to perhaps talk specifics here, what about the universal code of conduct that Democrats have been asking for when it comes to ICE operations? Do you support that, or would you be willing to compromise on that?
Should be standard law enforcement practices. I know the Omaha police here, I think, do a great job. So there should be a standard processes for law enforcement. I do think Holman has done a good job in Minneapolis. He came in there. I think he turned down the heat, turned down the volume. And it's probably good, because I think it's always bad when you have Americans pitted against Americans. You see violence in the streets. I think some of the stuff that was done in Minneapolis was unnecessary, and it takes leadership. And I think Director Holman's the guy to do it. So I applaud him coming in there and creating some stability. And so it's really more about leadership than anything else.
Well, Congressman, even if Republicans feel like they have more leverage than Democrats here when it comes to a shutdown, do you have any concern that your party is taking a hit on this issue of immigration ahead of the midterms?
I do think there's a divide in our country on if you have someone here illegally, say for 5 years, and they're working, they have a family here, they're otherwise here illegally, being good neighbors. Our country's divided on that. And I think our own party, and the Republican Party, is divided on it. We have some that would want to deport anyone who came here illegally. I'm of the view that if you're a gang member or have done other kinds of crimes, surely we need to deport those people. But I do think it's a worthy debate how we can reform and make changes to the current laws. I support the Dignity Act, because I think someone who's been here for a while is working, taking care of their family, otherwise here illegally, they should pay a fine. They should never become a citizen, but they should be able to get a legal status where they can continue contributing to the country and their family and not worry about being deported. Now, will my legislation make it through that I support? I don't know. But we should have this debate. I think most Americans are where I'm at. They'd like a little bit of humanity here to go along with, law enforcement. Surely we all want to secure our border. It's a harder issue dealing with the 20 million people who are here right now illegally.
Well, Congressman, certainly that debate will be had over the next few months ahead of the midterms. I want to turn to tariffs now. You voted against a rule that would prevent the House from overturning President Trump's tariffs, saying that Congress needs to be able to debate them. Now, the president has said that any Republican who votes against tariffs will, quote, suffer the consequences in elections. Now, I know you're retiring, but do you worry those kinds of threats have a chilling effect on others in your party?
I've taken tough votes way before retiring. I've had contested elections for the last 10 years. Four of those were primaries. The president's been against me on it, in 2022. I encourage everybody, vote your conscience and vote what is best for the country and what is best for your district. And I also think, first of all, Article 1 says it's Congress's authority. It's our role to determine tariffs and taxes. We should not pass the buck there. We should fight to protect this authority. Secondly, I argue about the economics. I mean, we saw data last week. The average family is paying $1,000 in tariffs, and 95% of the tariffs are paid by the American consumer. That's the numbers that came out last week. And this is why we should debate it. Now, I fully support it. If we have a vote and people vote in support of the president, I respect the final results, but we should debate it, and we should be able to put this on the floor, debate the pros and cons, and do what Article 1 in the Constitution asks us to do. Now, I will tell you, tariffs are not popular in Omaha. I'm all over this district. I talk to businesses, large and small, and they're greatly affected right now by these tariffs. I've seen production lines, some of our factories being moved overseas, and that's why I'm standing up on this. Most Republicans will support tariffs if they're clearly reciprocal against a country that is being unfair. The sense of it is that is not being done now. 80 countries with tariffs at an average of 20%, and many of these tariffs have been done in I would say in a very capricious way. You know, going after a leader in Switzerland because the president doesn't like her tone, or going after European countries because they oppose the president's comments on Greenland. That's what we don't like.
And Congressman, we're seeing a historic number of House retirements this year, including 30 Republicans. Now, the current GOP margin is already incredibly narrow. What do you think this could all mean for the midterms?
Typically, midterms go poorly for the party in power. Only twice in the last century, I believe, has that been different. And so the historical side is not good. And that's why I would encourage the president, talk about how wages are climbing faster than inflation for the first time in 5 years, how gas prices are low. He does this once in a while, but then he gets diverted with Greenland or going after people's spouses. He's all over the map. He needs to focus on affordability, and then he did what he promised. He secured the border. If he would stay in what I would call what got him elected, it would be better for him and all the Republicans down ballot. But right now we're defending tariffs, Greenland. You know, we're keeping a dictator in power in Venezuela. These are things that I don't think fare well for Republicans. But they're the most important issues are economic. Right. And if he made the case, I think he would have a lot of support. It would help us down ballot. Congressman
Don Bacon, Republican on Nebraska. We're out of time, but I wonder how many of your Republican colleagues think the way you do, just haven't said so publicly. We appreciate your time today here on Meet the Press Now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.